Greetings. Welcome from Des Moines, Iowa. We are here today at a wonderful webcast to celebrate an important topic called Reaching the Next Generation to Sustain Modern Agriculture Practices. This event is being sponsored by the Alliance to Feed the Future, and we are so delighted to have you join us. Today, we are speaking from Des Moines, where the World Food Prize is taking place. In Des Moines, there are 1,500 individuals from 70 nations gathered to celebrate the importance of food in feeding our planet. Later in the week, we will be hearing from the UN Secretary General, giving a big keynote speech. Ban Ki-moon will be honoring Dr. Daniel Hillel, who will be receiving the World Food Prize. He has been an expert in micro-irrigation, responsible for good water usage practices that are impacting millions of people's lives. Alliance to Feed the Future is here today to also help support the importance of food, the World Food Prize, and so many other celebrations of food. And we're delighted to be sharing our stories with you. So I would like to briefly introduce our participants today, but we also want to welcome you, our followers on our webcast. We want to encourage you to ask us questions, which we will be addressing at the end of our program. And also, we hope that you're tweeting right now. Our Twitter handle is @Alliance to Feed, and we will also want to be sure you know about our website, alliancetofeedthefuture.org. So you'll see both of those listed at the top of our sign here. Now we want to turn over to our speakers. We are going to be hearing from David Schmidt, who is President and CEO of the International Food Information Council. He's going to be speaking about the international model for communicating about modern agriculture and food production. We'll then be hearing from Elizabeth Burns-Thompson, who's an agriculture law student from Drake University. And she will be talking about food in the future, a youthful perspective. Finally, we'll be hearing from Edie Fraser, who is the Chief Executive Officer of STEM Connector. And Edie will be talking about making food and agriculture a bigger part of our educational mandate. And my name is Kimberly Reed. I'm Executive Director of the International Food Information Council Foundation. So thank you for joining us. Please tweet. Please send us your questions. And now we're going to start with our program. So first of all, let me give a more lengthy introduction of Dave. Dave Schmidt has been a frequent speaker on a wide range of food safety and nutrition issues as President and CEO of the International Food Information Council. Prior to joining IFIC, he served in the first George Bush administration as Director of External Affairs for the Food Safety and Inspection Service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Schmidt also served at the National Advisory Board for the Center of Risk Communication Research at the University of Maryland, serves on a steering committee for America's Heartland, and participated on the steering committee on reinventing agriculture education for the year 2020. So Dave, we now look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you, Kim, and thanks to all of our viewers for being with us this afternoon. We look forward to giving you an overview of some great educational initiatives and hopefully we can connect to your world with the wonderful resources we have and an important goal for all of us in the U.S. to communicate about food and agriculture and make it part of our educational program for our next generation. Well, my goal was to give you first an overview of the Alliance to Feed the Future. The Alliance was formed in March of 2011 on National Ag Day. And it was an attempt to connect many organizations involved in communicating about food and agriculture. And our vision of the Alliance is really to achieve a balanced public dialogue on how modern agriculture, technology, innovation, and food production benefit society overall. Our mission is to raise awareness and improve understanding of the benefits and necessity of modern food production and technology in order to meet global food demand. In our Alliance, I encourage you to go to our website, as Kim mentioned, at alliancetofeedthefuture.org. We now have 107 organizations, very impressive across all of agriculture, industry and commodity groups, universities, professional societies, all who've agreed to this common mission that we feel so strongly about, the need to get good, accurate information about modern ag production and the importance of feeding a population that is going to reach about 9 billion people by the year 2050. So a little more about the Alliance. We're essentially an umbrella network of initiatives that often are seen as responding to attacks by those who don't like our modern food production system. And we think there's a lot of misperceptions out there that this alliance was formed to help address, because it is critical that we all have a great understanding of this need for agricultural production in the future. So why we did this? We wanted to connect various initiatives who in many cases were talking through their own networks and channels, but not really talking enough with each other. And we thought we could all be more effective if we shared best practices among our organizations and looked for those great ideas that were being effective in getting the word out to consumers, to teachers, to students across the country. So we do have a member website where each of the organizations are listed, and you can go to each organization's website or a specific link that's very pertinent to this particular topic. And so we're very excited with the number of partners that we have with us here in Des Moines today, and certainly with STEM Connector that you'll be hearing more about from Edie. And we just think it's a wonderful opportunity to connect modern agriculture to the important educational initiatives that we need to face in the U.S. One of the major initiatives that we're very pleased to have launched this summer and has been distributed into schools this fall is with a grant from Farm Credit. The Alliance to Feed the Future has produced a Farm to Fork educational curriculum series called Lunchbox Lessons. And this is designed in 3 different modules for grades kindergarten through 2nd grade, 3rd through 5th, and 6th through 8th, the middle school students. And so there are detailed lessons plans in each of these curriculums that help teach about modern food production, but do so using learning standards that teachers are required to address in base curriculum. So the idea is to not add on a new subject because teachers have so much that they can't get to these days, but to help use modern food production examples as a way to teach science, technology, engineering, math, reading, many other subjects. So you'll find these very flexible. And we were pleased to partner this year with the Education Center out of Greensboro, North Carolina. And they have helped us increase our exposure to just this fall, 750,000 teachers, reaching, we estimate, 15 million students and 20 million parents a year with this information. So this is a great new initiative to us, for us, and we hope that you all will take some time to learn more about it and see how it may fit in your communication needs and your resources. If we move to the next slide, the Education Center puts out a magazine called Learning, and we were very pleased to be the featured item in the fall 2012 edition. And there's a poster that each 750,000 teachers received, and I'll try to hold this up to give you a sense. This was kind of the featured poster in this Learning magazine, and you can download this from the Alliance website along with all of the curriculum materials as well. And on the back of the poster, it gives some examples of the various lesson plans and exercises for each grade-specific cause. And just to give you some of an example of what's there for you to take a look at, for the K through 12 educational curricula, Farm to Fork, where food comes from, is a whole series of exercises around that theme. Food choice, cost, and convenience, really talking about the wonderful range of options that consumers have in today's food supply. And then there are also parent send-home pages in each levels of the curricula that can help reinforce what is taught in the classroom. For grades 3 through 5, there's a segment on understanding modern food production, and then what are processed foods. Really making the point that we grow a lot of great food here in the U.S., but it does need to be processed into a form that is convenient and nutritious for us to eat and consume. And a lot of people along that value chain are responsible for making that happen. Then we get into, at this grade level, more nutritional information, a segment on serving sizes and portions. We know we have a childhood obesity crisis in the U.S., And this information that we have here in the Alliance links to many responsible authorities such as the USDA's, the government's My Plate initiative and others. So you can find how these initiatives can be accessed to help your educational curriculum. Looking at the grades 6 through 8, the middle school level, there's a section there on reading food labels, some on buzzwords that you get to know about some of these issues. And then energy balance is another example, again, related to that obesity issue, the importance of physical activity as well as a balanced diet in your daily routine. So if we go on to the next slide, I'll close with saying thank you to those who've taken the time to join us today. We're going to have a discussion, and we'll look forward to questions that we get from you on the webinar as well, but we hope that you'll contact the Alliance. We'd love to have your ideas. And for example, we've had a contest for teachers who use the new educational curriculum in their classrooms. We're going to look at some of the most effective examples and then share that information with you on our blog and other means. So we'll look forward to continuing the conversation today and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. So as we mentioned, the World Food Prize is taking place right now in Des Moines, Iowa. And the World Food Prize is the foremost international recognition of achievements by an individual who has advanced human development by improving the quality, the quantity, or the availability of food in the world. And so we understand through our Alliance to Feed the Future that it takes building those young leaders to become the future World Prize recipients. And so we are so delighted to have Elizabeth Burns-Thompson here with us to bring the student perspective to what we care about with modern food and agriculture issues. So Elizabeth Burns-Thompson is an agriculture law student at Drake University here in Des Moines. She was a 2011 graduate of Iowa State University, where she earned a BS in agriculture business and international agriculture with a minor in agronomy. And as I mentioned, she's now pursuing a law degree while also working as a government relations law clerk at the Iowa Farm Bureau. Burns-Thompson has held numerous volunteer leadership positions in agriculturally based clubs and organizations and has worked several related internships, including as the editorial administrative assistant for the Council for Agriculture, Science, and Technology, or CAST, and as a legislative intern for U.S. Senator from Iowa, Senator Tom Harkin. So Elizabeth, thank you for bringing your perspective to this great Alliance to Feed the Future webcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be a part of this panel and be able to participate in the World Food Prize event. I guess what I'm here to kind of talk about is the youth perspective and the evolution of kind of how purchasing choices and food decisions have changed and will continue to change over as we move into the next generations. One of my first slide here, what we've all come fairly familiar with, is the new My Plate initiative that came out recently from the First Lady and helping us make more nutritional choices. I think it's kind of interesting to think about how, in just my short 2 decades, I've seen 2 of these particular types of programs and initiatives and trying to help students and young adults make good food choices and lifestyle choices. And I think that there's a lot more that goes into our food decisions today in comparison to what we had in the past. Next slide, please. And this is just a short list of some of the things that I came up with just off the top of my head, things that just came to mind as you're walking down the grocery store aisle, sitting in a restaurant looking at a menu, things that are important priorities that we take into consideration when we're making those food decisions. Obviously, some of these are more important than others at different stages of life, different demographics and whatnot. But think of all of these things that go into just making one particular food choice. And we eat numerous times a day. Everybody eats. So think of all the things that are going into these decisions on a day-to-day basis. And as we sit here and talk about food and all the time that we put into it just as an individual at our food buying and purchasing decisions, we think about it, but who is really talking about it? Next slide. And I'm here to say that everybody's talking about it, and especially the youth. These are just a few examples of some of the things that first came to mind when I was thinking about the social media efforts and among some of the prominent youth out there that are really advocating for these causes. And there's a variety of outlets. Like I said, these are just a couple of the millions of examples of great, wonderful efforts that are out there of passionate youth and individuals that are really, really talking about food and stirring conversations and really building those opportunities for people to talk about these things and get that cross section of ideas and experiences. But even as we have all of these individuals that are having these great ag literacy efforts and doing great things, there's also a lot to be done. Next slide, too, please. And interesting statistics, I have heard over here recently, is only 2% of the U.S. population has any sort of direct influence into production agriculture. And if you think just less than 100 years ago, that was in the 90 percentile at least. And so just the drastic shift we've seen away from that ag literacy level. And I was watching a video one day, a presentation about the evolution of ag literacy and whatnot, and something struck me, and it was this particular photograph came up on the presentation that a majority of the populace, unfortunately, will look at this photo, an iconic photo of the American Gothic from the 1930s, and assimilate that to modern-day production agriculture. And for me, that's heart-wrenching to think that people still assimilate us to those sort of practices, and that's the ideology that is out there with modern-day ag. So there still is a lot to do. And this goes to show that, we do have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of untouched demographics out there that need to be educated, that need to have these conversations spurred. And I guess I would challenge you as a viewer, a student, an instructor, whether you're a professional in the industry, to really take the opportunity to find opportunities to spur those sort of conversations. Talk about your food, talk about issues that are important to you, and really spur that interest in agriculture and in production and literacy, and share what you know and learn from others. It's a great time for ag. There's numerous amounts of opportunities out there to do stuff like this, and there really is a need. So,
well, thank you very, very much, Elizabeth. And our final speaker for this great webcast is Edie Fraser. She is the Chief Executive Officer of STEM Connector. She's also, through STEM Connector, a member of our Alliance to Feed the Future, which is now at 107 different organizations and academic institutions. And we hope that individuals on this webcast are involved with groups that can become involved and join this big, great mission of ours. So STEM Connector is a critical network to link those advocating science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM, education across disciplines and distances. Edie is also well known as a business leader, entrepreneur, philanthropist. She is a senior consultant to Diversified Search, an executive search firm that's ranked #1 in diversity hiring and track record results. Over her career, Edie has founded organizations such as Diversity Best Practices and the Business Women's Network. She also served as a desk officer in the Peace Corps and has a great story she just shared with us about that I hope she shares with all of you. She's written 2 books on leadership and philanthropy and has won over 40 awards in diversity and women's leadership. And so, Edie, as you start your remarks, I also want to remind those watching this live webcast to tweet. Again, it's at Alliance to Feed. So please join us in the discussion. Send in your questions, and I'm going to turn it over to Edie.
Thanks so much, Kim, and to David and to Elizabeth. It's great to have all the generations. So just on a personal, was so important. And for all the youth listening today, is when President Kennedy said, ask not what your nation can do for you, ask what you can do for our nation. I leaped at the opportunity and signed up for the Peace Corps staff. I ended up, after doing college recruiting, taking course in African agronomy, and because I became desk officer for the country of Malawi and is clearly had food safety program there, I was switched to the country of Chad. I had a well drilling program there for safe water. So I just reflect back, and as you and your young people are thinking about your careers and what's going to give you the stimulus, today we think about the World Food Prize, we think about the great and absolutely essential work of the Alliance to feed the future when we look at the food and water problems and challenges that we must address. We thank you for what you're doing. Let us give you a little bit of background of what is STEM Connector and how you can get involved. We started this with the alarming fact that we're spending $1 trillion in America now on STEM education, but we're not moving the needle fast enough, and no one knew who was doing what in STEM education. So we hope that you will go to stemconnector.org and see that we've richly profiled 5,000 organizations. We can go to the next slide and show the website of STEM Connector. And if you're interested in certain companies for your careers, you can go to Just Try DuPont and look at it. You'll see all the careers they've got there, particularly in food and ag and electrical engineering. But you'll also be able to see all the organizations that are supported and be able to link in and see all those organizations in any company. But if you're interested for youth in scholarships, if you're interested in competitions, I think we've got well over 200 competitions for youth on the site. Please go and visit and see the multi-links that we've got on STEM Connector. I want to talk about STEM Daily. We only started that because we have a great group of young people that teach us every day about the importance of all you using social media and getting information. So we set the goal of being the #1 information source, and clearly there was no daily going out on every aspect of what was happening in the business world, in the government, in the states, and globally about innovation. So we started, and it's free, and so put your name in under STEM Daily. Sign up if you're going to get. Don't sign up if you're not going to use it, because we have about a 40% open rate, and that just means that everyone wants the best interest in STEM Daily. And just to tell you, we're starting STEM education called Ed Tech Weekly starting next Monday, because all of you in school can teach us so much about the revolution of teaching through digital and distance learning. And when we apply it to the world and to the third world, we absolutely know that it's not only the iPads and the phones, but it is going to be the whole way of learning and using resources. We now mentioned our town halls, and we hope to do one on the importance of food and agriculture together as we work with the Alliance and IFIC for 2013. But it is extraordinary if you want to jump on any of our town halls. We just did one on STEM results, and if we are looking at taking all this money of the organizations and the corporations, what are we achieving of every organization? What are their goals? What are their programs? And what results are they achieving? So we thank the Cisco Foundation for helping us, because we will have finished about 120 major profiles on results by the end of this year, and we want to apply that to all 5,000 organizations for what they are achieving into next year. So that's STEM results. You know, we're so proud of some of the STEM publication work, and as many of you know, that We've just put out 100 women leaders in STEM. And Kim, we're so thrilled that you were one of those leaders. And we just looked that there were 10 out of that 100 that came from the food and ag industry. So for you youth, and if you're interested in any of those, they included, when you look at Ellen Coleman, the CEO of DuPont, who also owns Pioneer, or if we go through our Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Cargills and others that are on there, we've got is General Mills, we've got Kraft, we've got so many. And today we just got notice that California, because we worked with them, are starting the 100 Women Leaders in California. Other states and countries will follow suit. And we just want to announce that we are working with many 175 women's organizations and corporations to announce 1 million women and girls that will be STEM mentors and mentees that we will implement. So if you're interested, you've got to email us, contact us, and make sure that you're involved. We mentioned on the next slide STEM councils. And for the corporate people listening, you'll have to let us know if you want to participate. What we know is the funding is coming out of foundations and education and corporate social responsibility, but we have to bring the communications to the people to the table, those that are heading up R&D and technology, those into public policy, those in human resources. So we're working with company after company to form their STEM council, and the same is true of the government. United States Department of Agriculture, we're so pleased that NASA and EPA and Department of Defense and others are all players in STEM Connector. We're doing many events, and we've promised in food and agriculture to wake up the Senate Ag Committee and do a hearing on all these good things sometime during 2013, and we're really propelling and working forward. And let me just tell you is many of the youth today, and if we look at the high school youth, have signed up through My College Options. We're monitoring 95% of the high schools and what your career interests are. If you're interested in food and ag and technology versus engineering or art and design. So we're doing a major report out in December. We can send it to you electronically. It's called Where Are the STEM Students? What are the career interests and where are the jobs? And it's so important that we tie the jobs. And if we look at the youth organizations, and so proud of the work of the 4-H and the FAA, and we can add the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts and all the youth organization, but we have to make sure there is a career pipeline to that process. So we're all working to build that future of what are the careers and the excitement of tying the education to very specific careers. So we've made a lot of commitments in the next slide. We're going to make sure that we've tied food and ag to all of our products at STEM Connector. We're asking you to feel free to sign up for STEM Daily or our other products. We're going to use our communications partners, and we are so thrilled to work with U.S. News and World Reports, to work with USA Today, with Discovery, with Bloomberg, with Disney. We've signed them up, and we are using them on very specific outreach for communications. So we hope very, very much that we will use communications and connectivity to make sure that the youth of this country, and particularly for those of you in ag and in food, to have a bright future and to impact the world and its future. So thank you for the partnership.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Edie. I'm just showing the final slides there for the viewers so that you have them. And now we're going to have a discussion. So I want to encourage all of those watching on the webcast to send in your questions. I'll be reading them in a second. But also, please continue to do Twitter. Off camera here, we have one of our colleagues, Susan Bond, tweeting on behalf of the Alliance, and we really appreciate that. And again, it's @AllianceToFeed, so please join in the discussion. So, Edie, I'm going to start with you. The World Food Prize, why we're gathered here today, really was created through a great event that happened in 1970. A man named Norman Borlaug was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for a lifetime of work to feed a hungry world. His achievement was an unending struggle to integrate various streams of ag research into viable technology and convince political leaders to bring these advances to fruition. So he ended up doing what we call sparking the Green Revolution, and help to train generations of young scientists. So as you do this important work through STEM Connector, I'd just like to hear some of your observations dealing not only with the 100 women in STEM, which was a wonderful celebration of great accomplishments of women in STEM, but what have you seen from young people to those very accomplished individuals today that you honored a couple weeks ago, including senators, cabinet secretaries. What have you seen over your years of being involved in STEM as far as what it takes to help make our young people of today, like Elizabeth, become those STEM leaders of tomorrow? And what do we need to do in the future to make that happen even more so?
It's great, and I think in honor of Norm Borlaug, but it's certainly in honor of, let's just take the women and girls. I was so thrilled that at our 3 events we've had so far on the 100 Women in STEM, even in one day, we had the tweets that went out to 3.5 million in one day. So what we want to do is impact women and girls and the future. So we can say, Elizabeth, you're a young woman, but therefore we announced the 1 Million Women Mentors and Mentees, and realize we learn as much from our mentees as we do from being a mentor. So we're asking everybody out that's listening to commit to either be a mentor or a mentee, and you'll be hearing much more. Secondly, is between the 4-H and between the Future Farmers and between the Girl Scouts and the other organizations. And we want to join with you, Dave, Kimberly, to host a youth summit. First of all, a strategic group of bringing the youth organizations together. And we can't do it, Elizabeth, without the youth participating. But we first want to do a strategic planning meeting with the youth organizations. When you think alone that the 4-H made a goal of impacting 1 million young people into science, and they still have a year to go, and they've already hit 1.3 million. So, and just if we can look at those 1.3 million kids going on to careers, but if we put everyone together, the Girl Scouts now have a merit badge on innovation. So, and we want to tie the food technology and ag to innovation, but we want to really pull the groups together and announce beyond our 1 million mentors for women and girls a youth goal that is different from what everyone is doing that we can achieve. And maybe we will tie that to feeding the world, Dave.
Thank you very, very much, Edie. And so we're going to go to our first question from our webcast viewers. And Dave, I'm going to ask that you also answer something for me as you address this question. I'd like for you to talk about the formation and creation of the Alliance to Feed the Future and what helped drive that. And here's the question. Have you been working with the American Association of Family and Career Sciences, or AAFCS, groups like FCCLA, which you mentioned earlier, and family and consumer aspects of food education as well? And if so, in what way? So talk to us about what drove the creation of the Alliance, and then talk to us about working with these student groups to help with aspects of food education.
Right. Well, we've certainly had discussions in the IFIC organization in recent years about the frustration about a lot of criticism about how food was produced, and some even advocating that we go back 100 years and perhaps forget about some of the technology learnings that we've had. And yet we started seeing other groups within agriculture, whether they be commodity groups or food science groups, others all wanting to have kind of their own communications to address the same issue. But we were at risk, I believe, of having a lot of different focused efforts that were not necessarily speaking to each other. So we convened a number of these organizations before the Alliance was formed to share some information about what each of us were doing, and was there an ability to share resources and avoid duplication of effort that can be very expensive. And as we've gone through recent years of a tough economy, it was going to be difficult for groups to each go out there on their own and communicate about food and agriculture and food production, and perhaps if they were only focused on their own networks, weren't going to be effective and might have spent a lot of money. So the goal was to get more people in with a similar mission talking to each other, representing all of food and agriculture, but also not just keeping it an industry effort, but broadening it to the academic organizations such as universities, professional societies such as CAST or Institute of Food Technologists, American Society for Nutrition, groups like that who all play such an important role in communicating about our food supply, but often their own individual messages don't reach the everyday consumer. So this was a momentous mission. But we do see other groups, such as FCCLA, for instance, was mentioned in the question, is a member of the Alliance to Feed the Future. The American Association of Family and Consumer Sciences, I believe, is not yet, but we work with them at IFIC and the IFIC Foundation on sharing materials. So there's an example of a group that really should be a member of the Alliance, and maybe we'll remind you that there's no cost to join the Alliance. We wanted to make it easy for this to be a confederation that can get together and share efforts, although we're always looking for voluntary contributions to help us make accomplishments. And that's why the grant from Farm Credit was so critical to the educational distribution that we've had this year. So I hope that we'll work with many more groups, and please let us know either directly to the Alliance or to me directly if you have suggestions or other groups willing to join us.
And again, the Alliance's webpage is alliancetofeedthefuture.org. Our next question from our webcast participants goes to Elizabeth. So, Elizabeth, what is a practical way for young people to communicate to others the need for food and agriculture production education? What are some good ways that you can be reached as a young person, and also that we should be engaging in with young people not only in this country but around the world?
That's a great question, and the easiest way I can answer that is use what you're already doing. I had a great point earlier. All of us are, I shouldn't say all of us, but a majority of us are using social media. We're out there talking to people. You have classmates, you have colleagues. Take those opportunities to talk about the issues. Use a little bit of your Facebook time to advocate for a specific issue. Send out a couple tweets about something that you're passionate about, and that will spur a lot of healthy and rich conversations about these issues. I know it personally has for me, and it's worked very, very well, and I find it very, very rewarding. But also, that one-on-one dialogue is beyond priceless as well. And finding the time to engage in those sort of conversations with family members that maybe you wouldn't have usually have, colleagues that maybe are outside of the agriculture arena. I know, especially for me in law school, I don't have that I'm not surrounded by the ag literacy that I used to be when I was in a college of ag. So I take the opportunities to listen to people and some of my fellow students and such, when they hear a story on the news, take that opportunity to talk about the issues that they're hearing on the news and they're reading in the paper, and talk through those issues and kind of dispel some of the misconceptions and really tell the real story.
Thank you. Edie, the next webcast question is, as we continue engaging young people in STEM careers, how can we keep in mind that agriculture is diverse and different to everyone?
That is a good question of how, as we focus on careers, can we make the agriculture careers and all the different areas of ag careers. And so from the companies to nonprofit organizations to the government, from food technology and engineering to the production kinds of roles, what are the career sets that are up on certain sites, and what is your real interest? So we focus on the criticality of planning your career and not just getting you in the system, but exciting you about a specific career. And then you have to apply that to the food and ag field and understand. And clearly today, if we look at most candidates for jobs, having global experience, for example, is indispensable. So the fact that you've lived abroad, traveled abroad, studied abroad is absolutely essential. The fact that you've been very innovative in terms of your types of projects and your teamwork, and I just want to throw out that to all the young people is you never want to talk about you always want to talk about your team and what you did, because in job interviews it's absolutely critical as we look at what these ag teams are doing and the creation of new products and new technology and new audiences as we think about the world. So I think it would be really interesting for us to come back to the ag organization and talk about maybe the top 25 ag and food careers, because you all as organizations know those, and we would be delighted between linking those to our site so that all the young people are thinking about what excites you in a food and ag career.
Thank you. So as I mentioned, we're here in Des Moines at the World Food Prize, and it's an exciting time here for those of you who are thinking about coming in future years. Today, we're with 1,500 people from 70 different nations. And tomorrow, when the big award prize takes place, it will be at the Iowa State Capitol. And those on the webcast, if you want to see what this is all about and hear some fabulous stories that build on the theme of what we're discussing today, log on to worldfoodprize.org. The ceremony will take place at 7 p.m. Central Time tomorrow, which is Thursday, October 18, 2012. But the World Food Prize's website is a great resource to refer to throughout the year, as is the Alliance to Feed the Future's website. And as Dave mentioned, there are links to our 107 now partner organizations. So our IFIC organization and STEM Connector and different academic institutions, great links to each of those separate groups and resources that those groups have selected that help you get to what we're talking about today in our mission of feeding our world. So building on that, Dave, our next question is for you. There are 1 billion hungry people in the world today, and as you and I know and everyone else knows, but we want more people to know, our population is going to go from 7 billion today to 9 billion in 2050. So that's going to be 2 billion more people that show up on our planet over the next few years. So as we have hungry people today, we're going to have new mouths to feed over the next few years. How can we hope to impact world hunger without using modern techniques?
Right. Well, this has become such a common discussion, but I think many of us who are so close to this have heard this phrase so many times that we've got to really double the amount of food that we've produced in history in order to feed the people that are going to be on this planet just a little over 30 years from now. And yet I believe I've met so many impressive people in my career who feel so dedicated to this mission. And we can sometimes look at our own situation and say we have plenty to eat, and perhaps maybe we eat too much sometimes, but it's still not the case in many parts of the world. And there is a need to focus more and more on technology to provide some of the solutions, because we have a fixed amount of land to use, a fixed amount of water, and if we aren't focusing on sustainable agricultural practices that can help us increase the volume of food with these fixed assets that we have, we can't, as the questioner suspects, we cannot meet these obligations without technology. So what produces technology innovation is education. And so what Edie has just talked about, I think, is so critical to get more students excited about this particular area, because the future of the world really does depend on more and more students going into the STEM education areas and getting excited about becoming a bigger part of our food and modern agriculture production process.
I want to build on that question for a second. Elizabeth, how can we get young people excited? What do we need to be doing? Help us.
And that's a good question. And I think it's a matter of having the experiences to really figure out what your passion is. I've had the great opportunity to have a number of opportunities to see, a number of different job opportunities, aspects of the industry, and really students need that. They need to see the exciting parts of that. They need to see that your job is fun and that there is fun things about, being an adult and growing up, and there's fun things in the industry and there's something to work towards. And as soon as they get excited and they find that passion, it's that light bulb goes in and there's no stopping them. There really isn't. So it's a matter of helping people navigate that path to finding where they want to be. And for a lot of them, if they don't have the background or they don't have the support system to help them along the way, that we need outside resources to be there to be able to help them find that.
Kimberly, I'd just like to add with Elizabeth, there are so many scholarships. There is so much in terms of competition money, and you can go on our website, stemconnector.org. But the fact is, what Elizabeth said is go for it and realize that there is specific money. And if we think about some of the ag organizations, they're providing scholarship money. So it goes from the 4-H to the American Association of University Women to so many others, where you can go after and get some grant money, some scholarship money, and some support money. And as we all look for youth, if you want to get there and stretch your horizons, and go and ask somebody you respect. And don't worry if you get turned down, go to the next person, go to the next organization. But follow what Elizabeth said, those dreams and ambitions.
I'm going to build on that for a second with a question that's come in for you, Edie. And you noted scholarships. Do you have a scholarship in STEM Connector for postgraduate students in developing countries? So we're taking this outside the U.S. How about developing countries? How can we be helpful to building those future leaders?
Not sure we know the answers, but let's talk about the post scholarship. I was just with 2 women this weekend. One of them has a major company in energy and minerals in Africa. She's working with the African First Ladies on a project like this. So if we just take the continent, I think what they'd like to do at the United Nations next September is announce something of that magnitude. We had the woman that is CEO of the Kuwait Oil Company, which is incredible, when she talked about that 70% of the jobs at the Kuwait Oil Company are women. Now, that's not Saudi Arabia, and it's not so many of the other countries, but it is Kuwait. But she is deeply committed to making sure there are more scholarships, there are more opportunities. So I think this is a big goal of looking at between our National Science Foundation, our State Department, his undersecretary is very interested in that issue, for us to go to some of the foundations and look at what they've got. And again, it's about collecting that information and putting it out there, because one of the things, just to take the United States, there's no one stop for where you can get even STEM-related scholarships, right? So we've talked about is maybe we can monetize and get some support for putting that together, because for all the students, just to know, there are at least 300 locations to go get scholarship money beyond colleges and universities. And then we need to do it for the U.S., and gosh knows it needs to be for the developing nation. And so that takes a very focused strategy and execution plan.
Okay, we're going to thank you. We're going to take this discussion to something that's happening this year in the state of California. So, Dave, I'm going to give you a couple questions here that have just come in and let you handle these. First of all, does IFIC have a position on California Prop 37? So could you explain to the viewers who may not know what that is all about? And also, there's a question that builds on that. How do you feel about GMOs and the ability to engineer crops that can grow with limited water and soil and decreasing the need for pesticides in non-GMO crops? And I know that we at the IFIC Foundation like to use the term food biotechnology when we talk about that type of language, because we are the communicators of science. So first of all, Prop 37 and then food biotech.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kim. I'll try to address that. The Proposition 37 that's mentioned in California is a statewide proposition to require the labeling of foods produced through genetic engineering to indicate that on the label. And I should point out that both IFIC and the Alliance to Feed the Future do not take positions on legislation or policy issues, but I believe we would both have resources that as you consider your own position, or that if you have constituents looking for information, we have information on why, for instance, the FDA does already have a labeling policy on foods produced through biotechnology. And if there were a change in the product's nutrient value or composition or introduction of an allergen, that would need to be indicated on the label. So there is a national policy already there, and we've recently produced on the IFIC Foundation some videos of physician experts talking about common questions about food biotechnology, and we've covered these are kind of 2-minute capsules on safety, benefits, and others, and one of them is on labeling. So I'd certainly encourage you to take a look at that and getting good science-based information, because sometimes a question seems obvious, but when you look further, the answer, there's a reason for the science basis of our food and food production policies and technologies overall. So on that, and then the question about the use of biotech. Yes, that's something we've communicated for many years, that we believe it is an important technology. It's not the answer to feeding the world, but it's, however, a set of tools that can help. It can help, and has already demonstrated that it can help crops grow more reliably under whether it's drought conditions or increased bug infestations of crops. So there are ways that the technology is now saving certain crops that otherwise would have led to very difficult economic consequences. I even heard an example since I've been in Iowa this week that we've had a severe drought, as many people know, in the U.S. this week, and because many of the crops are more tolerant due to biotechnology that's been introduced into the food supply over the last 20 years, the corn crop was able to sustain a lot of this severe drought and ended up with far less damage than many growers thought may happen because of the technology. So that's just one example, and we know the worldwide use is increasing, and we think it is going to be a piece of that puzzle to attaining the food we need by 2050 and a sustainable food supply.
Dave, since you've noted that, I want to build on your response to say, when did the gap in understanding of modern agriculture begin in the U.S.? We've heard about Norman Borlaug and his big Nobel Peace Prize Award in 1970, and yet we're seeing this gap of understanding. Do you think it is an urban-rural misunderstanding?
Well, I think there's a piece of it. I think it's multifactorial. I just think of my own experience. Growing up as a child in the 1960s, I had an aunt who was an agricultural extension agent in Kentucky, and she taught me a lot about harvesting fruits and vegetables when they were at their peak of their ripeness, and which turns out to be peak of their nutrition as well. We would get such delicious products that my grandfather had a farm, and we could harvest those. But she went around teaching others how to can foods and prepare foods. But our technologies have advanced so much that what was seen as a real wonder, perhaps in the 50s and 60s, has become commonplace. So many times we don't question how we're able to get such great ripe foods in cans or in our grocery supermarket. And we get them not just in the U.S. or down the road, we get them from all over the world. So we have all these choices. At the same time, we know that our population has moved away from the farm, essentially. So while my grandfather was a farmer, my parents were not, and we're seeing more and more that people don't have a direct connection to a farm. And I think that's something that I know Elizabeth can comment on as well. So the further we get away from it, the more that it's not a part of our day-to-day appreciation of what we do. I think we tend not to think about it. And our point for having all this is that we think it's really important for more and more people to think about how we continue producing this really amazing food supply and the supply of choices that we all have.
Okay, I have a joint question, one from our webcast and also a participant, and also one for me. And so first of all, Elizabeth, you've had a great, successful career as a young person and now a wonderful young woman law student. We expect great things out of you in the future. I'd like to know what advice you would give to a young person that you've received that's been helpful to you planning your path for the future. And I know that internships are probably a part of that. So Edie, the second part of that question is, what information do you have for young ladies that may be members of YWCA for internships, and what is the age range for participation? So
I guess my couple... I'm trying to think as far as snippets of advice. You know, you have to really find what drives you. I joke with people. I'll go up to someone, introduce myself, say, "Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm a law student, but I really don't want to be a lawyer." That spurs a great conversation every time, and it just gets you into discussing what you want and what you want out of life, what your passions are. I've reached out and talked to people about certain things that seem interesting, and kind of let those things build on one another. I would say take the opportunity to travel while you can, especially if you are a young student in college or just getting into that or looking at that opportunity. Take those opportunities. It really is the best time for you to reach out, get that educational experience. I traveled a number of times when I was an undergrad, and it was the best decision I ever made. You get a worldly perspective, and it does change you as a person. But as far as professionally, a lot of people will say, keep yourself one person professionally, and you have your personal life and your professional life. And I guess I've kind of let that boundary go away. And I know that's kind of a taboo, but I think we're seeing a new generation where those lines are going to start going away. And my professional friends are also personal friends, and the way I carry myself in my personal life is also the way I am in the workplace and in the classroom and everywhere. So I don't have different facets. I am me, and a lot of people will like that because you're a lot more charismatic. Employers like to see the real you. Everyone can read a resume. Everyone can look up your GPA. That's black and white on paper. They want to see who you are. So let people inside. Find little things that make you unique, and that will really differentiate yourself.
Thank you.
I just want to say to Elizabeth, that's really cool, because we asked so many women leaders and business in 2 publication what were some of the personality traits they thought the most important. And the one that came out the most often was be your authentic self. So you just said that, Elizabeth, and it's really important. Coming back to the internship. So if you go on the YWCA website, there's a calling for future leaders to apply for internships around the world. So and hopefully that's up on our STEM Connector, YWCA, as well. But the importance of internships, apprenticeships cannot be underestimated. For all of you young people out there, I don't know, I personally probably had 5 internships. And I think, Elizabeth, if you look, it is the experience that you want. And clearly, if you tie that, so It's very important. All the corporations offer internships. Most of the organizations have internships. So just what we say, the one thing, even though we have many internships up on our site, we really need to organize and the scholarships with linkage in a much better way, because your gift to your pipeline in terms of where you're going on a career can be so advanced with the right internships.
Very good, very good. So I have 3 questions from one person in Egypt. So Dave, these are going to be for you, and I think you may be getting a little excitement from different parts of the world about our Alliance to Feed the Future. So this is from one person, 3 different questions. So first, we want to know whether it is our vision to sustain the modern agriculture practices in developing countries like Africa, with special reference to climate change risks. So that's his first question. So is our vision,
restate the question, okay?
Is it our vision to sustain the modern agriculture practices in developing countries like Africa with a special reference to climate change risks? So talk to us about how climate change plugs into our Alliance mission.
Right. Well, I do think, climate change, and growers would tell you, is an important factor in today's agriculture, where we've seen, severe weather patterns moving from parts of our country where they hadn't been before. And obviously this is happening globally too. So this is an important area. And I would just maybe think about our Alliance has started with a U.S. focus, certainly, but we do see application, have already had questions about, could Alliance members from other countries, could members join from other countries? And the answer to that is yes. We haven't had the chance or the resources to contact everybody who we'd love to see as a member. So if you're a nonprofit organization interested in food and agriculture and would concur with the mission of the Alliance to Feed the Future, please contact us about sharing some of these practices and examples. And I think we all learn by understanding each other's stories and narratives and successful examples. So we do know that there are many organizations in the U.S. and elsewhere trying to help crops that couldn't grow in Africa before become a traditional part of agriculture there. So a lot of great progress has been made, and I think even more will be made in the near future. And so with the Alliance being not an organization that conducts our own research or has the technical capabilities, but we have the ability to tell a story. So if you help us learn more about a story that would be beneficial to other Alliance members, we'd love the opportunity to perhaps give you an opportunity to write a blog on our Alliance site to help tell these stories.
And I'll build on that first question. So, and I'm going to, we're not revealing those who are sending in questions, but I'm going to make an exception in this case. So Dr. Mohammed Salim from Egypt, thank you very much for participating today. And his other questions, I think you've already answered. He says he can make a partnership with both this Alliance and STEM Connector for his students to join and learn as well. And he also would like to, in addition to his university in Egypt, he'd like to be working with USAID. So thank you very much for those two. Dave, tell us, why do groups try to raise doubts about the safety of modern agriculture techniques? Why are we hearing a lot of this?
Well, it's a great way to get attention. We've learned in the communications world that it's easy to get more attention when you raise fear, when you raise concern, than it is to say that something is safe or that you should be reassured. I can't assign motivations to everyone, but some people do this to raise money. It's classic fundraising to alarm one side of the public and ask them to contribute toward your cause. So food is so personal; it's so close to all of us that I think it's one of those areas that has been exploited in many ways to promote certain lifestyles and others. And then there are others out there who certainly have very honest philosophical differences. And, for instance, the organic industry has been a growing industry in the U.S., and there are some people who just feel that's a way of food production that they want to live by. And the great news is you have that choice in the U.S. and of course, many parts of the world as well. But I think it's not something that's fair to tear down another part of agriculture in order to promote one smaller segment. And I think that's what we've got to have, some of the dedicated people that we do have in universities and government and others who don't get distracted by the noise on a smaller segment, that keep their eye on the ball on this major goal to produce enough food to feed the world. Because if we all start fighting territorial battles, then we won't have that focus on feeding the world. And that's what we want to keep the focus on, the big picture. But hey, we'll take comments and dialogue from all sectors, but let's make sure we keep our eye on the big picture.
We have two final questions that have come in through our webcast participants, so please send in your final questions, and please continue to tweet. So I'm going to ask Dave this question, but I also want to hear about your interactions with this particular group as well. So the question is, have you networked with the American Farm Bureau on the mission of the Alliance to Feed the Future? So Dave, will let you answer that, but then I'd also like to hear, Elizabeth and Edie, your interactions with the Farm Bureau.
Okay, I will briefly say that we have, and I know that representatives of the American Farm Bureau have attended some of our alliance meetings in the past as we were formed. They have not yet become a permanent member of the American Farm Bureau. I don't want to speak for them, but I know they've also been very involved and certainly a major sponsor of the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance, which is another alliance that has formed. Many members of the Farm and Ranch Alliance are members of the Alliance to Feed the Future, but not all. And American Farm Bureau is one. So certainly if representatives are listening and participating, we would very much like to have them as a member of the Alliance. I believe we do have some state farm bureaus as member of the Alliance. So
and we have the American Farm Bureau Foundation that is a member of the Alliance as well, but not the Farm Bureau. So we'd love that to happen.
Okay. Elizabeth.
And I guess in being an employee of the state association, I see on a daily basis, we work every day to promote agriculture. We're doing many of the same things that the Alliance is doing. We have the same sort of motivations, the same end goal. We want to promote agriculture. We want to, feeding the world, it's a huge issue. The Iowa Farm Bureau actually has a American Needs Farmers program that started up with University of Iowa, and that's a great program. It's a great way that we've been able to touch a lot of even individuals in Iowa that don't have exposure to ag through a little bit of a fun football sort of environment. But it's at the end of the day, it's the same goal. We have the same mission, and we really are pushing towards the same thing. We're the same people doing the same stuff. So we have the same end goal in mind.
Well, it was just fun. I just looked up very, very quickly is the American Farm Bureau in STEM, and it's clearly, in fact, in June, they announced a new education game, which is really called In My Barn, and it is really cool about STEM activities by using particularly math skills on your farm and for food and fiber, so it's great. And if we haven't covered it when they announced it in STEM Daily or put the profile up of the American Farm Bureau and some of the innovation on STEM, we will by tomorrow, because it is clearly that we've got to connect the dots. And when you talk about games and innovation for schools, this is a great example.
Thank you. What is your opinion on the Let's Move program that is Mrs. Obama's initiative? How can we combine messages with Feed the World and the obesity epidemic in the U.S.? So, Dave, I'll punt that to you first.
Yes, well, I think the Let's Move campaign is a great message that all consumers need to hear, and it is focused on children. As I referred earlier to the childhood obesity initiatives, really has become a national problem, and I think the leadership the First Lady has shown on this issue is very much appreciated by a number of groups and has inspired a number of groups to include thinking about physical activity in addition to talking about more balanced diet and eating plans at all ages. I think there's been an increased interest in farming, for instance. Many people talking about gardening at home. That's become a big discussion, and that's led to an increased focus on agriculture, too. So I think certainly her focus and the focus from many more people on food, agriculture, exercise, lifestyle has been critical. So we certainly believe that the Let's Move gives all of us another umbrella to incorporate more communication efforts around.
And I think anything that you're going to get people up, moving, going, I mean, get active, it's great. I will take that even a little bit further, Dave. Anything that's going to spur talk about ag, I hope that also helps support some of our vocational programs. I personally have watched a lot of high school vocational ag programs teeter-tatter on the edge of being cut, especially with extreme budget cuts. Those vocational programs are the things that are really on the chopping blocks, and it breaks my heart to see them go. And I think that those are needed more now than ever. And so I hope that through initiatives like this, we're also spurring more support for those sort of programs as well. So.
Well, and Let's Move is extraordinary. And Elizabeth, we join you because we watch the budgets in Washington and the PE programs are being slashed, et cetera. But the program about learning about foods is really critical. I would just like to take it to the business sector because we just had fun 2 weeks ago with the leading woman at PepsiCo that's in charge of new product development with R&D and biotechnology and what you can do to really build new products and vending machines that have tremendous new healthy products, and how fast we're seeing taking those career skills and putting them to innovation of products to really encourage. And then when we see the vending machines already occurring, whether it's in England or Singapore, where you can see those healthy products and walk out of the subway system and punch them and have them all delivered to your home. So if we could take what we're discussing today and really apply it to your careers, it really is tremendous if we see it as opportunity.
I guess I'm going to take off my hat for a moment as moderator here and speak as executive director of the International Food Information Council Foundation to say that our organization absolutely is dedicated to combining the messages of feeding the world and obesity epidemic and how we talk about things like non-communicable disease prevention and control. So our IFIC Foundation several years ago created a great kids program called KidNetic.com, and we have a parent's guide and a teacher's guide and fun games on our website that help kids stay active and learn about our food. Our IFIC Foundation research shows that only 9% of Americans understand what calories are. And so how can you help with the obesity epidemic without that educational platform underneath that so many of us as part of the Alliance to Feed the Future are supporting and helping people understand calories in should equal calories out if you want to get at obesity. But also as we feed the world and need to think about what we're doing worldwide, we have an initiative called Understanding Our Food. And we have a great guide, a toolkit, to help people understand how modern food production and processed foods also fit into this equation, because we want safe, affordable, convenient food for people all around the world. And so not only does food biotechnology make that possible, but communicating about that to influencers, because there's a big discussion right now in the public space about what is the role and appropriateness of these things. And we want to feed our world, and we want to do it in a safe way, but we need to be communicating. And so groups like ours and the Alliance help break down those complicated messages to people and make sure that facts and science-based facts are part of the discussion, not just emotion. So that's just a little bit of input that I have. Okay, some more questions have come in. Let's see. Does the Alliance have a position on the importance of agriculture research?
Yes, as a matter of fact, one of our partners in the Alliance is the National Center for Food and Agriculture, National Coalition for Food and Agricultural Research. And again, the IFIC is a member, and the Alliance has given us an opportunity to communicate some of these messages and programs in places such as Capitol Hill. So again, we have that same creed that we cannot take positions on formal legislation, but in general, we do see the importance and the need for agricultural research and increased efforts in this area. This is an area where particularly public research on agricultural production, et cetera, has gone down over time, like many other aspects of society. So there is a need for this to continue so that we are on the cutting edge of innovation. But if it came down to a particular legislation initiative, we wouldn't sign up for or against it, but to say in general, we do think there is a great need for agricultural research.
So we're going to have one more question, and Dr. Salim, who is an assistant professor of plant pathology in Egypt, you sent in some more questions. We'll follow up with you on those offline. But we really want to discuss how does this conversation about feeding the future education connect to hunger issues worldwide? So I touched on that a little bit, but Dave, do you want to take that to the next level?
Well, maybe that is a way to distinguish, because there are so many great efforts out there that some are focused on hunger as it now exists, even in the U.S., of course, in addition to around the world. So the Alliance to Feed the Future is not a hunger organization in that sense, but we see the long-term needs to connect food and agriculture to technologies that are going to ensure that we can continue to feed the world. But there are, of course, many great organizations who are doing tremendous work, whether it's gleaning agricultural products after harvest to be sure that food that sometimes would just be turned into the soil is then captured and able to help food pantries and other groups. There are tremendous number of aid programs that whether it's from the U.S. or other countries that are helping developing countries meet hunger needs, and yet we still have, I think you said up front, a billion hungry people in the world, that just shouldn't happen with all that we know about food and agriculture. So we certainly commend those efforts. We don't want to compete with those efforts in any way, but we want to be again a voice that can talk about what is needed, how we can also talk what's been successful. So again, we'd love to talk about some of the great work of these other groups who are helping to alleviate hunger in the U.S. and around the world.
Okay, one more question has come in, and this will be the final one, and it's going to be a little controversial. So you ready, Dave? Okay, here's the question. Organic is not a lifestyle. Our country is the fattest and sickest in the world. We should keep spraying our food with chemicals and genetically modifying everything. Obviously, this is working out really well for the U.S. I don't think we need to feed the world. We need to concentrate on being able to feed ourselves well first. So do you have a reaction to that and a comment?
Well, that's just an unfortunate view of agriculture that I don't share. And I think we have a tremendous agricultural production system in the U.S. that is the model for the world. And we see countries all over the world sending their experts to the U.S. to figure out how we do this. And yet I think the organic industry, as we said before, has production that are a choice, that are available to consumers, and oftentimes those products cost more, and consumers have to make a decision on whether they can afford to pay more, and oftentimes they don't. But whether a product is produced organically or through conventional means or through biotechnology, it has to meet the same safety standards or nutritional standards that the U.S. Food and Drug Administration or the USDA requires on the products. So we are all demanding safe food and nutritious food, and we're getting that. And we have a great regulatory network that ensures that happens, and a great food production system that tries to put the best product on the table all the time. So when there are problems, I'm impressed how quickly in the U.S. we can react to addressing those very quickly and alerting to consumers, whether it's a food recall or other means. But again, it's a big world of agriculture out there, and I think it's a great system, but it can always get better.
Right. So now we're going to have some brief closing remarks, and we'll start with Edie.
One, I think we really salute the World Food Prize, and we salute your work to the Alliance to Feed the Future when we think of the billions of people. And Elizabeth, to you and your future as you represent anyone who wants STEM Daily, just go up on stemdaily.org, sign in, and you'll get it today, and you'll get it every day, and you can always log out of it and use STEM Connector. And in what have we learned today that we are thinking about we have to do, because we do have the competitions up on the site. We have some internship information, but we do need to put more focus, if we can, over the next 2 years on coordinating all the internship program, the scholarship programs, and specifically, we really love to think about all the careers in ag and food, because we've done a lot to follow the Bureau of Labor Statistics and all their food categories. We're now looking at every state in America, and we're looking at where the jobs are open for careers. We want to make sure we've aligned the food and ag careers as we look at every state in terms of where those jobs are open and where our youth are interested in those food and ag careers. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess I would reach out to all of you that are maybe my age or right around in there, that are looking at, you're in a big transition in your life, education, maybe jumping into the job market. I would say right now it's a very critical point in your life, and things are expensive, and there's student loans, and it's a lot of take and not a lot to get back, it seems, but your future is an investment, and that's the way I try to look at it. And that's professionally, that's monetarily, it really is an investment. It's an investment of time, it's an investment of effort, money. It's an investment, and it will pay off in the end. So take the time to look into opportunities and invest yourself in your future. And as another thing, I would also say, take the time to also be a role model and a mentor. I know Edie talked about, being a mentor, a mentee, but find the people in your life already that you are a role model for. I had the fortunate opportunity to be a big sister. My little sister is 17, and she means the world to me. And I strive every day to try to set a very good example for her, try to be a good role model, and push myself professionally so that she will do the same. So set yourself up so that you're on that pathway to success, and really invest your time, and it will pay off.
And Dave, before you start your closing remarks, a few more comments have come in, but one is to your last comment. Biotech, this is a comment, biotech is trying to decrease the need for spraying chemicals. Just a comment. Thank you for your great presentation. So with that, your closing remarks.
Well, thank you. Well, that is an example that we've learned a lot about crop protection methodologies over the years, and biotech is, in fact, one of those tools that we've been able to reduce the use of certain chemicals, or you move to less impactful chemicals on the environment. So that's been just an example of a tremendous advancement in technologies. I would just like to say, on behalf of the Alliance to Feed the Future, we thank you so much for your time and being a participant on our webcast today. But I'd also like to thank all the Alliance partners who make this collaboration really possible. And it has been so fun for me over the last couple of years to meet people that we just didn't deal with as an organization before, and see how the connection, as Edie's organization, STEM Connection, makes so obvious. But connecting the dots between all of us is so critical to our being successful as a society and keeping the right focus on these important initiatives. And I'm just pleased to be a small part of it through our role with the Alliance, and we look to grow and to hear from many of you. But thank you all, and to all the organizations who sponsor you to make this possible, because we'll need even more of you in the future.
Well, thank you very much. In closing, we have a question. Does this program provide continuing education credits? So we're going to see about that. And if you value a program like this, perhaps we can do more in the future to be sure that we are furthering this educational mission of the Alliance to Feed the Future. Again, go to alliancetofeedthefuture.org for the student lesson plans that Dave spoke about earlier, and also click on the links to all of our different groups to find our own individual efforts furthering this mission. It's been said about Norman Borlaug, who we're celebrating through the World Food Prize, that he has saved more lives than any other person who has ever lived. And I hope that through this alliance and through people gathered in Des Moines today, but also all around the world as we celebrate Food Day of every day, that we are cultivating a new person who's going to be saving more lives than even Norman Borlaug for our 21st century as we go from 7 to 9 billion people. So much of what we do today will make our world's future success possible, and we want to be part of that solution and hope that you will join us in that effort. So thank you very much for tuning in. Please keep in touch, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you for participating.